What I want to talk about today are really only just three basic points, and they're really, really important ones. And the first point is about the future of people and work. It's a very, very important topic. We've gone through COVID, we're coming through the pandemic. According to Biden, we're through the pandemic. 250 people a day aren't dying in the United States or anything like that. But there's been, I think, a dramatic lack of vision on what we can do with work. I really do. I don't think that we've really thought about, we've got this wonderful time. It's been a disruption, a complete blowing up of everything. And I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about just humans, where we are right now when it comes to work. That's the first point. The second point I'm going to make is, does it matter? I mean, how much does it matter? Are we just another widget, another cog, something really depressing like that? Or are we really important? So I want to look at what do the facts say? What's some of the data say about that? And then the third part of this is, it's really difficult, more difficult than it was 6 months ago or a year ago, to get your budgets approved. All right? I don't know if you're seeing it, but we're seeing a lot of flatlining of budgets and a lot of, well, we'll just cut people because we've migrated from growth to value. And now if we're going to make the proposition, as I will, that people really matter, but we're going to cut all the budget around them, how's that going to work out for you? So those are the 3 points. Where are we right now? How important is it that employees really be down with that, and how are we going to support them through technology? And if you have any questions, we're a small group, which is awesome. Stop me anytime. I have 5 kids. They stop me anytime. I can say hello, and they're all gone. So let's do that. First thing, let's see if this clicker works, is just what we're going to talk about. I just told you all that. But I want to talk about where we are right now with workers. We spend a lot of our time working, and but you ever wonder how much relative to other things we spend working? Like, what's the number one thing we do in life more than anything else? It's easy, right? Let's take the first 3 or 4 or 5 things. Number 1, sleep. That's the easy one. Sleep. We spend a third of our life just sleeping. What do you think number 2 is? I thought so too. It turns out it's not. Consuming content. That's number 2. Way eclipses working. And it becomes intuitive when you think, well, because you're now in front of an iPhone. I have a 1.5-year-old. She sees that FaceTime come on. She grabs the freaking phone. She can't even really speak. She's like, it's, but she grabbed it. It's her FaceTime now, right? And you consume content all the way until you reach the exit ramp. I'm not going to talk about that part. Whereas you only work from whatever age to whether, not like my grandmother who started at 12, but we only really get rolling in our 20s and stop somewhere, unless you're in France where it's 50, or in Germany where you start at 35 and end at 50. But in the United States or Japan or most of the world, you're working, that's number 3. And number 4 and number 5 don't really matter. I mean, number 4 is interesting. You ever guess what number 4 is? Hey, who said eating? That's pretty good. You're pretty close. It turns out, I thought that too. It turns out driving, like you're commuting. You're commuting more than you're eating. That's like profoundly depressing. I don't think they counted eating while you're driving, but that's a. And then after that, it's eating, and then things get further down the track. So you think about how you spend your life, and then with the things you really like and what you don't like. The things we like the most are actually being in restaurants or pubs and or listening to live music. So already I've got you, because we're you're in a pub and we're listening to live music. That's like awesome. It's like the number 1 and 2 things we like the most. Interesting. We're very social beings. We love it. We're so social, though. One of the top 5 things we dislike the most is being at work. Top 5 things we hate the most in life is being at work. And it's kind of, wow, that sounds pretty awful, but it is what it is. And funny enough, in the middle, when you first see past the line between like and dislike, it's time, for those of us who have children, it's time with our children. But ahead of that, we like even more, is a walk with the dog. All right, we're profound. Let's talk about employment. So if you get to work, it's a very interesting thing. I looked at, this is a global survey, but I'm just looking at US, but Gallup extended it to global, and funny enough, here's the global look of how much people are actually engaged or not engaged. I'll just build it out. Bad news, good news. Bad news, 60% of the employees who work for you, they say they're detached. They're just showing up. 60%, this is global. The one I showed you before is US and it's very similar. I love the 19%. The 19% are actively out to get you. They just don't like you. They're just getting a paycheck and they're going home. But then there's the 21%, that's it. 21%, and I bet you it's all the people in this room. It includes me. I love my job. I actually love my guy. Guy in the corner loves his job. Would do it for, right? You love your job.
I love my job.
I love my job. How about you? Anybody hate their job? We all love our jobs. So let's take a look at why do we love our jobs. We're that 21%, and the interesting thing about us is we pull up all the averages. It's all on our back. We're 37% more productive than the average, and it really depends on us. So if I look at that, and it's really interesting over here, I looked at, it's hard to read, but what about people who choose their own profession and choose their own time? And it turns out that if you compare people who don't have a choice, who are very satisfied, it's not very high. People who choose their own lifestyle and their own work at their own time, have autonomy, they're wicked, wicked happy. And people who can choose their own time, very few of them are unhappy. It's just the thing about, we like autonomy, and when we're thinking about the future of work, it's how do we get more autonomy at work? So I'm going to look at this and say, well, my next point was, does it matter? And I would argue that not only does it matter for human capital, which human capital is a really, really precious thing. We're automating things, but there are many, many things we could have this conversation. You can't automate them, right? You can automate, but I would say there's nothing with symbolic analysis, right? What it means, what are the bankruptcy laws in New York? I can automate every part of that. It's all automatable. Should I declare bankruptcy? Harder to automate. That's like, let's sit down and have a conversation. That's symbolic analysis. Divorce laws versus should we get divorced? Should I go bankrupt? What are the bankrupt? All these things are symbolic analysis, and we're never going to replace humans with some kind of other form of silicon-based life. But if you look at some of the really cool stuff up here, this is work that we've done with a number of different companies. I'll show it down below. But what we found is that the people, I'm going to build this up one more time. If you plot companies, and over here you can see some of those companies in that top right quadrant, the ones who not only get, we always talk about CRM. In fact, our stock symbol at Salesforce is CRM. But the interesting thing is the confluence of customer excellence with employee excellence. And if you look at the difference in the top right quadrant, the people who say that they're leaders, both in the customers are happy, so you say an NPS score, however you want to measure it. If you take those people and you overlay it with the ones who say their employees are happy, not only is historically, do they have a higher compound annual growth rate, I mean significantly higher if you look at all these different pieces. If you look at just their profits, they're 23% higher in profit. There's something about that human element that you can automate, you can save some money through AI and everything else, but the human factor turns out to be the differentiating factor. And that's what I'd say, CRM is EXNet. But what happens? This is me, my first day of work, right? Work is the place where your dreams go to die, said my daughter. She just entered the world of work, and she called me up. She said, you never told me this. I said, well, not everyone has my job, sweetheart. But this is your onboarding. I mean, this is it. You come in, you got your nicest clothes on, if you're in the 1620s and you're Jonathan Swift, right? Gulliver. And like, well, what do you mean by that? Well, what do I mean by that is I came in all bright and shiny, but the minute I got to work, this is what you showed me. There's not one Maoz. There are like 5 of us. And what do you mean? Well, I had to go on my onboarding. My onboarding has always been miserable. My onboarding, HR is calling you to do this, and IT is telling you to do this, and pick up your phone and make sure you don't do this. But look at all these things up here. These are our systems. I mean, these are not fake systems. These are our business silos. We take the employee and we take her, them, or him, and you say, well, if you want to get your security to here, you want to go through, all these are great products down here. It's not about the products, but you want to get through everything. You've got to learn a million things before you even get started. And so for us, we come in with bright and shiny ambitions, but especially the new generation of workers, I'll say call them Gen Z or Z or wherever you want to call them, all they know is easy. right? For them, it's like swipe. It's like, if it doesn't happen with a swipe, that's how they bought on Amazon, that's how they got stuff in Stitch Fix, that's how they found their partner. It's like, all I do is keep swiping, and there I was. I had a partner. And then they get to work. It's true, right? You pick your dog, you can do anything else. But when you get to work, there's no swipe left, swipe right. In fact, there's no automation really at all. It's so painful. And the systems you put me in front of, it's like, oh, I got to do this system for this and that system for this. There's no unified interface. There's no workflow. It's not intuitive. I say, gee, I forgot. How do I just put in this for benefits? God help you. All right. Oh, we have a search bar, but it only works for HR. The HR help bar, but if you go over to here, it's a different search bar. And so the complexity kind of brings us down. And when you look at why people are relatively unhappy, it's kind of one of the reasons. But I want to look at this group right here, and that's everyone in this room. And the question is, how do we get everybody to be us? Because we're marvelous people. And I look at these people. This is a great, really, really great. I love this example here. I don't like people having to read things on screen, so I'm going to tell you. But this is the team at Washington University. They were actually a husband and wife, and they won the Nobel Prize. And she, by the way, was the first American woman ever to win a Nobel Prize. They were at Washington University, and they were doing diabetes research. And they were so incredibly passionate and so incredibly collaborative. Most of us, like, I got a great idea, and it was three of us together. It turned out it was my idea. And if it dies in the vine, it was your idea. And their thing was, no, there's no my idea or your idea. There's our idea. And the passion that they brought to their job led the best minds in the whole world to want to come to Washington University and work in their lab. And I talk about passion, commitment, knowledge sharing. None of that's about technology. Although they were one of the first, like, open knowledge. Everything was open to everyone, not only in the team, everywhere. They're like, we had to solve this problem of diabetes globally, not in this lab. Their team ended up with 7 Nobel Prize winners. This has never been repeated in the history of the world. Not in the history of the world. You can check me on this. You should check me on everything, by the way, because I make stuff up. No, I don't. Yeah, I do. No, how would you know? You know, I've had people sit there and Google me. It's like, wait a minute. Oh, he's right. This has all been fact-checked. No, it hasn't. It has, I swear. Check it out. Never in the history of the world has it been repeated. But you look at all the best organizations today, and the ones who work in a collaborative way to solve problems, they're the ones who are winning. But if you look beyond it, how do they get to that? It's because I trust you. And if you look at our company, I don't know about your company, but the first thing we list under our mission and our values is trust. It's like, our customers have to trust us, our partners have to trust us, our employees have to trust us, our suppliers have to trust us. So we put that at the top. And number 2, of course, is customer success. Of course, that's number 2. And then after that, it's innovation. And after that, it's equality. And after that, it's the environment, the sustainability. And you say, gee, does this guy really memorize? I don't memorize it. I've got it tattooed on my tush. I mean, I live this thing. I really do. I mean, it's easy. And if you look at most of our employees, how do we get the best employee? I mean, how do you get the best? Where do the best, like, electrical engineers want to work today? Do you know? GE. Did you say GE? I did. Do you work here?
My dad works for GE. He's an electrical engineer.
All right. That was actually once true. A wonderful, no. Emphasis on once. But it was one of the greatest companies in the world. But where did somebody said it. Tesla. Number 2? SpaceX. This guy's a ringer. I brought him in. He's my lieutenant here. Number 1 and number 2. That's where they're going. And then you say, my company is in Duluth, and we work on back-end insurance company stuff, billing, and you're like, you want to go work? Now, it should be, because I can work from anywhere now, right? I can work from anywhere. So I can now work for a company in Duluth from anywhere, but will I work for you? And the answer is not if you don't have these values which really resonate. And I know that for myself, I watch everyone young who comes in through the workforce. I do a lot of work with universities. First things they ask me about Salesforce is, what do we learn there? And it's not like they don't ask me about pay. They don't ask me about pay. They assume there's a bar, you're going to pay it. They don't say, oh, is your stock going up? Our stock's not going up right now, right? But still, we have 90 applications for every job. Still. But why? And again, I'm not trying to push Salesforce. I'm trying to push your company. I mean, your company's got to be the one that says, yes, I'm here to lift you. I'm here to support you. I'm here to advocate for you. We have a great, great record on DEI. So if you're one of those people, we're going to help you with inclusion. We lift you up. That's how you're going to get the best people. Meaningful work in a collaborative environment where I believe in your mission. It's not going to be this. It's not going to be the salary. It's not going to be any of these things. It's going to be the combination of those. So my question to you is, how are your managers doing? And there's some great data we brought out. First of all, it's like I say, steal from the best companies. And we can talk about who are the best. Maybe one of you, and you can add something to this conversation. But when we talk to C-suite members, this is a recent survey of ours, I thought it was interesting. 52% of the C-suite said, oh yeah, we got this. Then you go to do the employee survey and say, hey employee, how's it going? 32% say we got this. Like, we don't have the technologies to do our job. What you've done is put me out at the end of the diving platform, you shackled my hands behind my back, and you pushed me overboard. That's what you did basically at work. But the C-suite's like, oh, we got them the best systems, we got everything. You know, we got this suite, we got that suite, we have Salesforce, we got it made. But not from their perspective. You think about it from the jobs to be done. Have you ever read Clay Christensen's last work, Competing Against Luck? Anybody? Okay, homework assignment. If you want, I'll send you all a free copy. Clay Christensen, of course, The Innovator's Dilemma, the last book he wrote before he passed away at too young an age, was Competing Against Luck. And what he said was, do we know the job to be done? So have you lived the life of the employee? Have you actually sat with her and seen how successful he or she or they are at their task and build forward from there? Or your customer. And which customer? Is it the Gen Z, really savvy tech person? Or is it your large business, or is your small business? Is it your foreign? Who is it? And when you prioritize what to fix, was that what it was based on? And most people would say, I did 3 roundtables up in our tower, and all of them were answering the question about how they prioritize. And I said, where's the customer? Well, what do you mean, where's the customer? We did surveys. Did you live their life? Have you sat in a call center? Have you been out with a tech support person? Have you actually been a salesperson? No. So you gathered these quote unquote requirements, but you haven't lived the life. So the jobs to be done is go out there and do that. And again, we're kind of broken up from where the employee is feeling. So I showed that they're not really loving it. But if you look at this, if you go to, again, back to the C-suite, most of them are kind of in this delusion that, oh no, they love us here, it's awesome. 70% of them will say, yeah. But then you go to the employees and 44% will even say that, yeah, it's a good place, it's a pretty good place. That's a huge gap if you look at the measurement. And the last thing to say is that majority say, you know what, I don't even have the data to make that decision. So there's kind of a gap, and it's not that difficult to close if we can get the data from the customers or from the employees, coming back, in this case it's the employees, to say, what is it that's making your life difficult? And the last part of that is, though, do you really care? And I think that's the part I'm looking at. Darth Vader, your boss. So this guy in the back is going to know the number one biggest element that makes a person happier or unhappier at work is the boss. And it's not all these technologies we were talking about. You can fix all of that crap. It's my grandmother's French coming through. I actually cleaned it up from when she... but you're not going to fix it because management, again, has had a splendid lack of vision about how to fix all this stuff. So poor leadership vision. Right now, we've gone through this future of work thing, but yet, what are they telling you about why you should come back? How many are saying you have a come back to the office policy? Any of you? How many have 100% of people at home? 100%? Over 50%? How many of you have any kind of policy that they must come into the office at least 1 or 2 days a week? Just one. That's pretty good. You guys are, again, you're enlightened. But the average company, the best they can say is, you should come back into the office 2 or 3 days a week. And you say, well, why? So you can be with your colleagues. Well, but 30% of my colleagues live in Seattle and London, and you told them last year, 2 years ago, like my daughter works up in Boston, they have to come back into the office 2 to 3 days a week. So she says, okay, I commute to the office, I get to the office, and then I go on Zoom. because everyone's out of the office. And what fun is that? Right? So we have to really think as managers, we have this great opportunity to maybe do some change, but we have to take it on ourselves to move the needle a little bit. Right? There's been a lot of rapid shifts, and one of the things we kind of forget, if any of you ever studied anthropology, anybody ever study anthropology?
My son.
Hmm?
My son.
Your son? Well, talk to your son. I give you an excuse for, while you're walking the dog, talk to your children. Right? But it tells us that through most of history, we had things for which we got immediate feedback. Right? You went and you killed something, or you picked something. You made a meal. You did something that at the end of the day, you could say, this is awesome. I did something, if you didn't say, this is awesome, but you could see immediately, right? What do we do now? We have projects, and they go on and on. And we have emails that go on and on. It's like you have email vomit.
Yeah.
Or you have Slack threads. We bought the company, we love it. But there's Slack threads that go on and on. Projects that go on and on. Work that you don't, at the end of the day, go, oh, that was so awesome. You know, in summers, I used to build houses. You know, you did something. You actually did something. You put up a wall. You put in some tile. You did something. You went home, or the next day you were going to finish it, and you got great reward. And I got to go surfing down in Margate, New Jersey. I tried. It was awesome. That's what I got to do. But it was discreet. And now we're not getting rewarded a day at a time. And our managers, you think they're getting into this one-on-one. And there's a really intentional one-on-one where they're going, I've got this great agenda. Let's work on it together. Here are the things that I'm seeing, but what are you seeing? Let me hear a little bit about you. Here's what we're trying to do. Here are the measures. What are the reasonable KPIs, and can you actually achieve them? We're like, great customer experience, great products, great this. And you're like, well, how do I measure that? What's the measurement? And how do I have the tools to actually do it? Oh, well, you don't have the tools, but I expect you to do it. We're not even having that conversation. So the idea of having meaningful metrics codified, I came from Gartner, where I was an analyst, as you heard. It was so easy. I never had to meet my manager unless I screwed up. And I screwed up a lot. People would like, don't send that Maoz guy, he's such a whatever. But my metrics kept me in the company. And we would go to the customer and say, what the hell do you expect from an analyst? Well, I expect him to be available within 3.5 days on the phone, because we pay a ton of money to talk to them. I want them to be the world's greatest expert, but I don't want to be a cheeky bastard. I want them to have a little humility. I want them to give me an actionable piece of advice. That was easy. So guess what? They surveyed the customer on those 4 things, and there was a scorecard, and everybody in the whole company could see it. Everybody. Just like we have at Salesforce, by the way, just like at Gartner, we have what's called a V2 MOM. Every metric is right there. You want to see my metrics? You want to see what I'm being measured on? Go for it. I can see yours, you can see mine. I can go from Mark Benioff all the way down. I don't want to sit down. We don't have a chart that goes up and down. Imagine that. An org chart that goes sideways. But the org chart goes that way because we don't believe there's a higher and a lower. We believe everyone has a task to do, and all these pieces fit together. And I'm not pushing my own company because I had it in my previous company, and the one before that, and the one before that. I've never actually had a job which I didn't like. Even though my first manager, when I came in, he was a warlord, I swear. I came in the first day, he pulled out his credit card, and he ran it against my cheek, goes, go home and shave. What? On bring your kid to work day, he yelled at me for bringing my kid to work. I went to HR, I said, he's nuts. He goes, yeah, I know. I still love my job. Anyway, we got to overcome these things. We have to think a little bit differently. And I look about companies that do it, companies that get this right, people who give their employees autonomy, measure them properly, give them the tools to do it, and they're doing really well. But some of our best workers are actually leaving the workforce. If you look at who went and worked from home, we now have, just in the United States, it jumped to 30% who's working at home, but the biggest number are independents, and they're also the happiest people. People who are working from home on their own, crafting their own life, and that's bad for us. I mean, it's good for them, they're really happy, but also how are we going to bring that institutional knowledge? They're part of the institution. I gave an example of the Mom Project, because they've been around. Do you know the Mom Project, any of you? They're great people. And all these people who are home have tremendous value, but it's really hard to be a person. It's not just for moms, by the way. Anybody can be a part of it. But the idea is people who are independent, but you want to bring not only their institutional knowledge, all their expertise in, but you want to make them part of the group. When you get those things all right, doesn't matter if they're independent, doesn't matter if they're outsourced, doesn't matter if they're badge employees, you're going to bring things up. So the question is now, and we could probably bring Michael in for some of this as well. I just did a blog piece on this because everyone's worrying, how do we get this stuff funded? And these are just a list of some of the things that I went around to, I don't know, I guess 75 people. I started in London and Ireland, and then I went to Tel Aviv, then I went to Paris, and this is like a really tough job, believe me. I had to go to all these places. And then San Francisco and New York and Chicago, and then Toronto, right? I met with CIOs, I met with CEOs, I met with admins, I met with developers, and I asked them the same questions about how are you getting your things funded. And it's interesting because a CEO in Canada, actually the head of, I won't know, a car company up there, it doesn't matter, he said, you know what sustainability means for us right now in 2022? It means how do we sustain this business? And suddenly that sustainability thing, which was really, really big just a year ago, it kind of went down. We're still talking about it, but it's like, I need to know how do I sustain a profitable business in Canada? So here's some of the things, and here's where I really like to have this more of a conversation and kind of go from me speaking up here to kind of the thing. But the first thing I notice is that I believe that we're going to continue to invest in IT. And we're going to invest, maybe not at the level immediately, but I think we're going to continue to invest. And the reason for that is that I don't think we have a choice. If you were around in 2008, and I can tell by your faces most of you were around in 2000, maybe you weren't, maybe you were, I don't know, luckily, but I saw the thing happen in 2001, I had it happen in 2008, and what happened, what kind of companies emerged around 2008? Can you think of any? I mean, I've been thinking about it, so I got a lead on you, but name some. Airbnb disrupted hotels while they were asleep, saying, oh, we have to cut back. Good time to cut back. Airbnb, two guys who couldn't find a room in San Francisco, disrupted everything. Who else? Instagram. Suddenly you got people like Kodak, and then this little sleepy company wakes up, Netflix, who had been around, and they went big, and like this blockbuster thing, I bet you they can't even compete with what we're going to do, and they did this crazy. Warby Parker disrupted the eyeglass industry. So many of these companies came up during 2008 because they said, we're going to bust open this business model and try something new. You had fintech emerging at that time and disrupt a lot of the banking systems, which took them billions and billions and billions of dollars to play catch up. So what my supposition here, listening, is with new twists in the supply chain, you can lead all these things. You know, with the way customers are going to interact. Are we getting fewer channels or more channels? Of course, hyperbole, more. Well, how do I deal with more channels? And each customer wants their own channel. I have to build processes that make it natural that I'm on this channel. I can't support 11 channels for every interaction. Impossible, right? I can't. I'd love to show up at your house to sell you a $1.50 item. I dearly would. But it's probably going digital. Another one's going to go into the home. So it's not that I'm supporting 11 channels for everything. It's worse. You're going onto a different channel for everything, and the customer is saying, I want to feel it's consistent. I don't want to feel like I come back to a Kantata event, and I'm looking right at you, and you're like, have I ever met you before? But that's how we make our customers feel. I'm like, I never heard of you. Well, I was just chatting with you. This happened to me. I was in a chat bot with a car company. I won't name them because they're a client. And I wanted to know what was the interest rate on a lease. And it was Saturday night. Why? Because that's when I have time to look at a new lease on this company. And the bot had no idea. He goes, oh, there's no interest on a lease. I'm like, oh, good. Can I take that to the bank? 0 interest? And it said, and we'll call you back on Monday. And when I had a call back on Monday. There was no call back on Monday. When I did call back on Monday, they didn't know I was in the chat bot, which is okay. It's normal. But we are setting up all these islands. So back to the point, we all know that. That means we're going to continue to invest because otherwise customers are going to go to the ones who straighten this out. We can't all be Amazon with fairly simple and buying stuff and returning stuff. We have a lot of different channels. So the other one, cybersecurity, I don't have to tell you, data concerns, residency, privacy, governance, coming from different channels. And now, how many of you do business in Europe? I used to think there was a Europe until I went to Paris. It turns out there's no more Europe. There's Germany, and there's France, and then there's that UK thing, And they're all different. They're all saying, oh, I was in France, and Macron's like, nope, we're going to put our own infrastructure, and everybody has to sit on our infrastructure, and the data structures have to be the same. And I went to Germany, and in Germany, nein, das geht nicht, Datenschutz. I'm like, for crap's sake, what are you talking about? Oh no, if you don't have the data structures in our format, on our systems, it doesn't go. So what I'm saying is that we're not going to stop investing. So the question becomes then, and this is, again, I'd like to see your thing. My thing is just, you've got to focus on agility, and that takes technology. You've got to figure out the processes. I talked about that, but if I'm in IT, I'm just saying, learn, for goodness sake, to speak in the language of the people you're serving. Like, learn to speak in the language of the employee, or the admin, or the customer. Because IT goes and says, oh, I'm going to do this kind of data ingestion, I'm going to put it in a data lake, I'm going to do content. Like, oh, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Oh, let me tell you. When you go in to do payroll, automatically you're going to get an alert, and we're going to download your report every 6 months. Whatever it is, speak in the language that they can understand, and make friends with these people. Represent the voice of the customer. If you're trying to get your project approved, use their business outcomes. What are they trying to improve? Why do you think they have to improve it? Be data-driven. I was working with a great company literally for a couple of hours ago, and they're like, we do a great job at project management. We look at each one of the processes, we look at the health of the process from the customer's point of view, that's how we prioritize it, and we try to do funding of the project by seeing how much cost takeout did we do from the former process. Think about it as like a federated tax, federal tax. I just brought down 4,000 hours from HR. That 4,000 hours of savings from the employee, think about how much time they lost, that equals a certain amount of money, and now I can move in and do something else. So it's like, that's what I mean by a federal tax. They have the KPIs nailed. If you have the KPIs, what you're trying to do, I can say, okay, this is going to improve by this much, I'm going to lower inventory by 2%. I can translate that easily. I'm going to reduce the number of calls by 1% while keeping NPS or customer feedback up. Everything you do, you want to do it as a KPI. Those projects are still going right through. And finally, how is it going to benefit those employees? How are the employees at the end of the day going to feel like they feel when they go home and they're just scrolling and looking for a new product? They're buying all their holiday presents, saying, oh, this is awesome, I love this. I'm doing a comparison table. It's really easy. There's no friction. Press the button, and it's the big easy. So to me, and I'd be interested to see what you think, but that's what I'm seeing. I just give an example. This is gratuitous Salesforce stuff, but I'm doing it because it's a true, I just got through talking to this. We're not supposed to mention the client name, so it's a recording. I won't mention them. But what I'm seeing is when we can tie these together, because that's the whole point, into a system where, remember how I started after Gulliver? I showed 18, 20, 30 systems, and they're all disjointed. This company, without us, by the way, they started to pull a lot of their things together. They looked at the processes and how a supplier interacted with them, how a customer interacted with them, how the employees interacted with the business. They started to look at this and kind of driven an intent-driven enterprise. And some of the things you see is, the employees want flexibility, so they worked on flexibility. They want consistency across departments, they worked on that. They want more digital, they gave them more digital. And what's really cool, they worked together. They looked at the data not as, oh, look at all this data, but they're saying, what do we need in order, let's not unify data in Snowflake. Anybody can do that, but what specific outcome are you trying to measure for? And of course, then operational excellence and processes. And it's really interesting to say, it's kind of the Rosetta Stone, because when you have that, suddenly sales can talk to field service, or field service can talk to marketing, or marketing can talk to logistics. And we can have these conversations in logistics, and I gave the example. I've got a pallet, and I've got another pallet. Pallet A belongs to a premier customer for who we have a contractual agreement that we have to deliver this. I have the second pallet belongs to a customer who's in a level, a tier 3. What does my system, ERP system know? I've got to fill 2 pallets. I have 2 orders, 2 pallets. But I'm using the system to say, what I do know is this customer is this type. If I take this over here and put it on the other pallet, that's an ERP thing. Then I send a message to the salesperson, tell them the SPIF client B, tell them when we're going to make them whole, offer them something, and it's all good. If we had an honest conversation, explain the reasoning why. We gave the client who needs the priority 1, priority 3, gave priority 3. That kind of honest conversation using data for better business outcomes, that's how you run your business, how you get things we're seeing today, getting them approved. And with that, thank you very much, and thank you for Kantata.